Ever been riding along, perfect day, sun's out, road's calling your name, and then bam, you're socked in by fog. Talk about a buzzkill. Today, we're diving deep into handling those less than ideal riding conditions. Our roadmap for this, an article fresh off the press from website name, it's called Mastering Motorcycle Safety. Tips for riding in all weather conditions, published December 9th, 2024. So whether it's rain, shine, or yeah, even that pea soup fog I mentioned, we'll give you the know-how to stay safe and confident on two wheels.
Rain's a good place to start, I think. Seems basic, right? But it's amazing how many riders, even experienced ones, get caught out when the roads get wet. Less traction equals longer stopping distances. It's easy to forget just how much grip you lose.
It's not just about slowing down, though, is it? It's like a whole mental shift. This article really hammers home smooth control. No sudden braking, no jerky throttle, and definitely no whipping the handlebars around.
You're absolutely right. Got to think ahead, react smoothly, like the article says. It even mentions avoiding the center of the lane. That's where oil tends to collect. Makes sense when you think about it, but honestly, I haven't always been the best about remembering that, especially when the rain first starts and hasn't washed everything away yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. You've got all those cars dripping who knows what onto the road. You really do have to be more aware of what's around you when it's slick.
Speaking of being aware, what about gear? What does the article say about gearing up for the rain? Waterproof everything, that's a given. But it goes a step further, talks about breathable materials too, like Gore-Tex. Especially important for folks who ride in areas where, the weather can change quickly and you might be working up a sweat on those mountain roads.
Yeah. You don't want to be soaked from sweat inside your rain gear that's almost as miserable as being rained on.
And can I just say, a good anti-fog visor, that's not just comfort, that's safety. Have you ever had your visor fog up at like the worst possible time? Oh, too many times. And that sudden blindness, it's scary, especially if you're already dealing with slick roads. Honestly, a quality helmet that breathes well, plus a good anti-fog visor,
Mm-hmm.
that's money well spent, like an investment in peace of mind.
Okay, moving on from water, let's talk about another force that can really mess with your ride. Wind. I'm talking about those times when you feel like you're fighting a gale just to stay upright.
Wind, man. Wind is something else. It's deceptive. It can push you around way more than you think, especially on open roads or when you're passing big trucks. The article mentions leaning into the wind to keep your balance. Why does that even work? I know it's like a sailboat using the wind, but physics-wise, what's going on there?
Right, it feels so counterintuitive, but then it kind of clicks. It's all about shifting your center of gravity, isn't it?
Exactly. The wind's pushing on you, trying to tip you over. So by leaning in, you align yourself with that force, use it to stay balanced. Obviously, different bikes and riding styles you'll adjust a bit, but that basic idea stays the same. The article also mentions tucking your body in to be more aerodynamic.
Like a human bullet slicing through the air. But seriously, how much wind is too much wind? Even the pros know when to park it, right? The article mentions that too.
Yeah, that's where experience comes in. There's no hard and fast rule. You got to assess your skill level, the type of bike you're on, the road conditions, how strong the wind is, which way it's blowing. Sometimes postponing the ride or finding a different route, that's the smartest move.
Safety first, always a good motto. And, another thing that can make or break a ride, extreme temperatures. I mean, we've all been stuck in traffic on a hot day, but on a motorcycle, heat exhaustion's a real danger. It's like you're wearing a portable sauna.
Ventilation is key here. Gear with mesh panels, fabrics that breathe. The article really stresses that. Even suggests soaking a bandana in cold water, tying it around your neck for a little extra cooling.
That's an oldie but a goodie. Works every time. Hydration too, of course.
Huh.
But the article really emphasizes pre-hydration. Starting your ride already well hydrated. Why is that so important? I always carry water with me. Is that not enough?
Think about it. By the time you're thirsty, you're already behind on fluids. And on a long ride, stopping for water isn't always easy. So pre-hydrating, it's like starting your ride with a full tank. And don't forget, those cooling vests and neck wraps, those aren't just for professionals. They can really make a difference on a scorching day.
Okay, from sweat to shivers, let's talk about the other extreme riding in the cold. Numb fingers, teeth chattering. It's not just uncomfortable, it's distracting, and that can be dangerous.
Absolutely. The cold can be just as challenging as the heat. Layering is your best friend. Multiple thin layers trap heat better than one big bulky one. It's science.
So we're embracing the onion look, layers on layers.
Exactly. And don't forget about a good windproof outer layer. It'll make a huge difference. The article also mentions those heated grips and handlebar muffs.
Those are game changers for sure. Can turn a winter ride from a test of endurance into something enjoyable. But cold weather. It also means another hazard we got to be aware of, black ice.
Black ice, every motorcyclist nightmare. Virtually invisible, and it can form where you least expect it.
What exactly is black ice? I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
bad, but
It's basically a thin layer of clear ice on the road, blends right in with the pavement, so hard to see. Often forms on bridges and overpasses first. Those get colder quicker than the surrounding road. Shaded areas, too, watch out for those, even if the rest of the road seems fine.
so it's all about being extra careful in those spots, especially early morning or late evening rides when the temperature drops, knowing the conditions, riding cautiously. That's your best defense.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned hitting some thick fog earlier.
Uh,
That can be as disorienting as black ice, just in a different way. It's like riding into a wall of white.
It was, like being inside a cloud, eerie and unsettling, to say the least. I could barely see a few feet in front of me.
Fog's one of those conditions that really tests you, your skills, and your focus. Visibility is reduced for everyone, but motorcyclists were especially vulnerable.
The article recommends using low beams in fog, not high beams. Seems kind of counterintuitive. Why would you want less light?
It's about glare. High beams, they bounce off the fog and can blind you. Low beams, they're aimed lower, spread wider, help you see the road better.
Ah, that makes sense. Like trying to see in a blizzard, you don't want to shine a spotlight right into the snow.
Exactly. And another tip, increase your following distance, like way more than usual.
That's always good practice, but in fog, yeah, essential.
You need that extra time to react if something happens. Even if you're decked out in high-vis gear and reflectors, assume other drivers can't see you well.
It's like being invisible, even though you know you're not.
That's a good way to put it. Fog demands a whole other level of awareness. You got to ride defensively.
You mentioned earlier experience and judgment. Those matter a lot in tricky conditions. But what happens when the weather changes suddenly mid-ride? You set off on a sunny day and then wham, downpour, or maybe even one of those freak hailstorms. What do you do?
First thing, don't panic. Panicking just clouds your judgment, makes you more likely to make a mistake.
Easier said than done when you're getting pelted with hail.
I know, right? But seriously, take a breath, figure out what's going on. How heavy's the rain? Lightning. Roads flooding. Once you know what you're dealing with, then you can make a good decision.
So it's about being flexible, having a plan B.
Absolutely. If the rain's light, you might just slow down, keep more distance, make sure you're visible. But if it gets bad, you got to know when to call it quits. Don't let pride or stubbornness put you in danger. Sometimes pulling over and waiting it out is the best thing you can do.
Learned that one the hard way a few times, I'll admit. Speaking of being prepared, this article, it mentions emergency gear. It's like having a superhero's utility belt, isn't it?
Huh. I like that. Compact rain suit, waterproof gloves, a small tarp to cover your bike if you need to, basic toolkit. You don't need much, but it can make a world of difference if you get stuck or have to make a quick fix.
It's about being proactive, taking control of your safety. The article also talks about rerouting if you hit bad weather.
Good point. If you've got a GPS or a smartphone with a weather app, check the forecast. Maybe there's a way around the storm or a town where you can wait it out.
Flexibility's key, working with the weather, not fighting it. Sounds like having a good grasp of weather patterns and forecasts, that can be a real asset for motorcyclists.
Definitely. Knowing what to expect, even if it's just a general idea, helps you pack the right gear, make better choices on the road.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Rain, wind, extreme temps, fog, the importance of adapting when things change suddenly. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, something to think about. The article mentions practicing riding skills in a controlled environment. Now, imagine your ideal rider training ground, a place where you could safely push your limits and prepare for any weather challenge. What would that look like?
That's a great question, one worth pondering. We'll be back in just a moment to continue our deep dive into mastering motorcycle safety, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into mastering motorcycle safety in all kinds of weather.
Before the break, we were talking about that idea of a rider training ground, a place where you could really push your skills and practice handling your bike in all those tricky conditions. Yeah, almost like a motorcycle playground for adults.
Exactly. A place to make mistakes and learn, but without the real-world risks.
So if we were building this ultimate training ground, what would it look like? What would we need?
Well, first off, gotta have a dedicated wet weather area, right? Imagine a huge paved space, sprinklers going, simulating everything from a light drizzle to a full-on downpour.
Oh, and we could have different surfaces too, asphalt, concrete, cobblestones, to really test out those traction skills.
Oh, and let's not forget the oil slicks. Designated areas with, like, simulated oil spills so riders can practice navigating those.
That's a great idea. And for wind, I'm picturing massive fans placed strategically around the course,
Uh-huh.
creating gusts of different strengths, keep things interesting.
We could even have a wind tunnel section where you get those sudden blasts of air that can really catch you off guard.
Like a controlled hurricane. Now, for the heat training, we need an enclosed area, adjustable temperature, crank up the heat like it's a scorching summer day.
A sauna on wheels, but you're in control.
And for the cold, we need the opposite, a temperature-controlled area that simulates freezing temps, icy conditions.
Like a giant freezer where you can practice on slip surfaces, test out those heated grips and handlebar muffs we talked about.
And of course, can't forget the fog machine.
Mm.
Got to have a section for practicing those low-visibility techniques.
This training ground would be amazing for riders of all levels.
A place to really hone those skills, build confidence in a safe environment.
Now, this article we're talking about, it goes beyond individual weather conditions. It also talks about adapting to sudden changes while you're already riding.
Yeah, that's crucial. Weather can be unpredictable, especially on longer trips.
Imagine you're out there cruising along, sunny afternoon, and then boom, dark clouds, downpour.
What do you do? What are your first steps?
First, assess the situation. How heavy's the rain? Lightning, roads flooding. You got to gather information to make a good decision.
You got it.
If it's light rain and I feel comfortable, I'd probably just slow down, keep more distance, make sure I'm visible.
Smart moves. But what if it's really coming down, or you see lightning?
That's when safety comes first. I'd find a safe place to pull over, wait it out.
Sometimes patience is the best option. Let the weather pass.
And that's where having that emergency gear comes in handy, right? Rain suit, gloves, tarp to cover the bike.
Exactly. Those things can make all the difference.
This article also mentions rerouting if you hit a major weather change.
Right. If you have a GPS or a smartphone with a weather app, check the forecast. Maybe there's a way around the storm or a town where you can take shelter.
Gotta be flexible. Adapt to what Mother Nature throws at you.
Absolutely. And above all, stay calm.
Yeah, easy to get stressed when the weather turns bad, but panicking won't help.
Stay calm, stay focused. That's how you make good decisions and stay safe.
Riding's all about enjoying the journey, and that includes being prepared for the unexpected, right?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's remember, mastering motorcycle safety, it's an ongoing thing. It's about learning, adapting, improving your skills.
And when you're out there on the road, knowledge is your best weapon against the elements. We'll be back in just a moment for the final part of our exploration into all-weather riding.
Don't go anywhere. And we're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into riding safely, no matter the weather.
We've talked about gear, techniques, being adaptable, knowing when to call it quits.
But there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't really talked about yet. The rider themselves.
Right. You can have all the right gear, know all the tips, but if you're not mentally and physically sharp, that's a problem.
Makes sense. Fatigue, stress, distractions, all that can mess with your judgment, slow down your reactions.
And on a motorcycle, split-second decisions, those can be everything.
So besides checking the weather, what can riders do to make sure they're in the right headspace before they even start the engine?
Rest is huge, seriously. Get a good night's sleep before a long ride. If you start feeling drowsy during the day, pull over, take a break. Don't try to push through it.
Better late than never, right? But sometimes it's not just physical fatigue, is it? It's stress, anxiety that can affect your riding too.
Oh, absolutely. If you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, maybe not the best time to be on the bike, take a walk, listen to music, meditate, whatever helps you clear your head.
Good advice. And once you are on the road, minimizing distractions, that's key. Phone away, don't fiddle with the GPS, no multitasking.
Be present. Focus on the road, the traffic, everything around you.
It's almost meditative, isn't it? That focus on the act of riding.
It can be.
Yeah.
But it's also about being proactive. Think ahead. What are the potential hazards? Have an escape route in mind. Be ready to brake or swerve if you need to.
Defensive riding 101. Assume other drivers haven't seen you. Always be ready for the unexpected.
And of course, it should go without saying, but riding under the influence, alcohol or drugs, absolutely not.
Yeah, no question.
It's not just illegal, it's incredibly dangerous.
Wow.
Impairs your judgment, slows your reactions, puts you and everyone else at risk.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the big takeaway?
Mastering motorcycle safety in all weather conditions. It goes beyond the bike, the gear, the weather itself.
It's about the rider.
Being prepared, being aware, being responsible, making smart choices.
And respecting the power of a motorcycle and the risks that come with it.
If you can do all that, you'll be able to enjoy the ride no matter what Mother Nature throws at you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into all-weather writing. Ride safe out there, and until next time, keep the rubber side down.